We are arriving now in Genesis to the Tower of Babel. All right, so you ready to go on this journey? Let's talk about Babel religion. Okay, I'm going to point out in advance of the story what I want you to see and listen to. The religion of Babel had a need to be recognized. A direct quote: "We want a name for ourselves." I want you to think about that. We want a name for ourselves. That sounds like a marketing line, doesn't it? You want a name. You need to get out there. People need to know who we are, what we're about. And that way they'll want to be part of our city. They also had a belief that they could reach or ascend to God by their acts, their activities, their behavior. Now that's a profoundly significant statement. They believed they could reach God by their behavior. That kind of gets a little close to home if you're remembering the last time you said, "How many good points do I have, God?" And whoops, I've got a bad one over there. Do 5 good ones collapse one bad one? Does my behavior save me? They had lost their sense of what sin was. We find the answer to that in the New Testament in Revelation 17 and 18. But Babel, the city where the Tower of Babel was built, had lost a sense, and they welcomed and embraced evil. Sounds sort of like the film, doesn't it? How can people who believe in God embrace evil? And yet, it's a story that's told in the ancient past. It is a story that says it will be present truth today. This is an important conversation. A very important conversation. In this way, they redefine God to be like themselves, believing that whatever they did, listen carefully, was therefore godly. And I think that's a profoundly serious thought to consider. Can you personally reach God in your own strength with your limited abilities? Spiritual perversion is the belief God is at your beck and call. That is a perversion of the truth. Is God able to be himself, or does God have to do what you tell him? Well, let me get a little more personal. All you need to do is claim enough promises, and God has to do what he promised. Therefore, you can make God do what he promised by claiming the promise. Have you ever heard that before? Thank you. That's an important thought. Spiritual immorality is acting as if God approves all that you think and do. Does God approve of everything you think and do? Or do we submit ourselves to God, is the question. It is the question for every religious and non-religious person on the planet. Every human being will ultimately answer the question. Now we need to read the story, okay? So, I put it up there. Doesn't take long to read the story. This is one of the very short stories of Genesis, and here it is. Now the whole earth used the same language and the same words. Remember, we're just generations now from Noah's Ark and the flood, and we're now back to a populated earth. They all spoke the same language. Verse 2. It came about as they journeyed east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. They said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly." Now these are not mud and straw. These are fired clay. Okay? And by the way, those are real bricks like we use today. So I want you to know that their technology was advanced at this time. These are not primitive, ignorant people. Okay? And out of Spokane in Micah, Washington, out in that area is the big brick plant where they make bricks. And it's an awesome thing to see where they have all the clay and there's just mountains of bricks. Okay? This is serious stuff. They know what they're doing. And they used brick for stone, and they used tar for mortar, and they said, "Come, let us build for ourselves a city and a tower whose top will reach into heaven, and let us make for ourselves a name, otherwise we will be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth." The other thing that's interesting is they wanted to remain a clan in the same neighborhood. I find this interesting because my father's dream when I was a child, was he bought a section which was 160 acres. His dream was to divide the 60 acres up for his 7 children, all to have some acreage on the ranch so we could all live together. I never told him it was Babylonian concepts, just so you know. I never did. But, this concept of we need to be together is an interesting one. I'm not saying that's good or bad. So let's just take a look. What was their intent? They wanted a tower that's going to reach up to God, and they really wanted to be renowned and remembered. And by the way, we are talking about them today. They succeeded in their endeavor. Just so you know, it worked. Okay. In verse 5, the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the sons of men had built. The Lord said, "Behold, they are one people, they all have the same language, and this is what they begin to do. And now nothing which they purpose will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and there confuse their language so that they will not understand one another's speech." So the Lord scattered them abroad from there over the face of the whole earth, and they stopped building the city. So they failed on one level. They succeeded in their marketing, and they failed in their accomplishment of building a memorial city to be pointed out as the great city for all mankind. End of the story. Here it is. Fascinating, isn't it? By the way, isn't it interesting that when you look at history and you look at ancient Egypt, what do you find there? You find pyramids. You find pyramids for all generations and centuries going back 6,000. Some claim 10,000 years. Don't ask me why. I'm not a scientist. But then, if you go over to Central America, what do you find? And if you go to Mexico, what do you find? And if you go to Peru and you go to Chile, what do you find? Everywhere you go, you find that wherever men scattered, they continued to build the same kind of structure, some of them virtually identical. So this is a fascinating aspect that you can see, like there is a fingerprint when the language issue developed and they went off in their groups of language that they spoke. They carried with them that same desire to continue building whatever these towers were. And by the way, they were all religious people. And notice the religion resulted in human sacrifice over and over and over. Now, we don't necessarily see that so much in the Egyptian religion, but we certainly see it when we get into the western parts of the world. We get into Asia. What do you find in Asia? Again, you find the vast temples, and you find some fascinating high towers in the Asian culture as well. Again, all based on religion. Therefore, its name was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole earth, and from there the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of the whole earth. Wow, that was a quick story. It was a long time ago. Babel's story returns. It is alive and well and present today. While you are sitting here today, the religion of Babel is a global religion. I wrote it this way. It's a global religion and connected to the sources of power within every society. It is the dominant worldview. today. Now, what I'm going to present to you in a few minutes is going to be different, really different for some of you, and I'm going to qualify that. Some of you will think when I get to Revelation in 17 and 18 that I should be talking about a specific denomination. I'm sorry, I will not be doing that today, because the Tower of Babel was a system of religion. And I'm going to tell you that Babylonian religion is a system that supersedes and reaches into every single denomination. No denomination is exempt from experiencing within that Babylonian religion. And I'm going to take it a step further. It's alive and well in my own church. Okay? I'm just saying that. I will give you the evidence as we go. Oh, let me just give it to you now. How many of you think that your good outweighs your bad? Well, Lord, I should be able to get into heaven because I've got 25 good things I did, and I only did one bad thing, when I robbed the bank. I should be able to get into heaven because my good outweighs the bad. You see, Babylonian religion is a religion of rationalizing righteousness. When you rationalize righteousness, you elevate yourself to ultimately remove God off His throne and put yourself there. It's called saving yourself. Thank you, Dallas. Well said. It is salvation by your human effort. And that is why Babylonian religion has the capacity to touch your life in ways you never thought of before. So it isn't about a particular denomination. It is about a system of religion that we replace God with our good behavior. And then we no longer need Jesus for a Savior because we have our good works. Ancient Babylon and modern Babylon are the same spirit and the same ideology. You must give something to get something from Babylon. You must give something to get something from Babylonian religion. Have you ever heard of the gospel of wealth? Okay. I attended a concert. Maybe I've told you this before. The gentleman who sang was just an amazing vocalist, renowned all over the world in Christian music. And it came time to make the offering appeal. I'll never forget the words. I know that there's someone here today who is going to write a check for $1,000. And God is going to bless you with $10,000. Can I read that little part in the screen in black one more time? You must give something to get something from Babylon. See, the gospel of wealth is if you give more to God, you can't outgive God, He'll give more to you. And it creates a system of works through giving. Interesting, isn't it? The story starts in Revelation 17. John writes, He carried me away in the Spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast. A beast is always civil power and civil authority. A woman is always the church. Always. It's always a religious institution that, may I say, began as a Christian institution. And we know that because of the woman in Revelation 12 with the crown of stars and the sun and the moon. Now we meet this woman, and she is not standing on celestial bodies. She is writing on civil authority. Something has happened to this woman, and there is a dramatic change in her. Listen carefully. The beast is full of blasphemous names, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was clothed in purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls, and having in her hand a gold cup full of the abominations of the unclean things of her immorality. And on her forehead a name was written, a mystery. In the Greek, the word mystery is not a secret. The word mystery in Greek means a thing to be known. Are you with me on that? So this is a thing to be known. This is not a hidden secret thing like we think in Western thought. So On her forehead a name was written, a mystery. Now here's the known mystery. Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and the abominations of the earth. And I saw a woman drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the witnesses of Jesus. And I saw her and wondered greatly. Why did John wonder greatly? Because this was the woman that he saw that began as the church. And now she's full of the blood of saints and full of corruption of the religion that he loved. And this shocked him beyond comprehension. Remember, you must give something to get something from Babylon. This woman is the mother of harlots. Can I just pause here for a minute? I don't know when the last time you heard a sermon about harlots. But with a harlot, you have to give something to get something. Are you with me on this? To get her love, you must pay. Do you understand that? Okay. Very interesting principle. We now move to Revelation 18, 1-5. After these things, I saw another angel coming down from heaven, having great authority, and the earth was illuminated with his glory. And he cried with a mighty voice, saying, Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. She has become the dwelling place of demons, and a prison of every unclean spirit, and a prison of every unclean and hateful bird. For all the nations have drunk the wine of the passion of her immorality. By the way, how far has Babylon spread now in this vision in chapter 18? Everywhere. There is nowhere this religion does not exist. It is everywhere. For all the nations have drunk the wine of the passion of her immorality, and the kings of the earth have committed acts of immorality with her, and the merchants of the earth have become rich by the wealth of her sensuality. By the way, if you give her $1,000, you get $10,000 back. Did you notice they've all made fortunes with her? Isn't that interesting? And you begin to look at the story, things begin to unfold here, and you go, man, how did they get rich through this woman, this religion? I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, so that you will not participate in her sins and receive her plagues. For her sins have piled up as high as heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities. Do you remember ancient Babylon's plan? Was to build a tower that would reach into God. Did you notice that this Babylonian religion has now reached up to God with iniquity? Okay, I mean, when you begin to look at the Genesis story and you come now to the Babylonian story, you say, wow, they finally reached God, but it wasn't what they intended. It's with their iniquity they are found in the judgment in the presence of God. Now, I've got 10 minutes. I cannot leave you with this story wondering whether you are in Babylon or not. I do need to show you the way out. So the following scriptures, I hope, will point to you something that makes the gospel profoundly clear. This story is in Matthew 18. What do you think if a man has 100 sheep and one of them goes astray? Does he not leave the 99 on the mountains and go in search of the one that is straying? If it turns out that he finds it, truly I say to you, he rejoices over it more than over the 99 which had not gone astray. So it is not the will of your Father who is in heaven that one of these little ones should perish. What is God's will for human beings? If you are his sheep, what is his will? That not a single human being would perish. Now, isn't that just a beautiful picture of God? But there's another picture of God that you must see here that's really important. Who is it that goes and looks for the lost sheep? The Good Shepherd does, who is symbolic of who Christ the Good Shepherd is. Who is it that initiates the search for lost human beings? It is God who initiates the search. It is God who is looking for you. Are you with me on this? It is not you running out looking for God. It is God who is looking for you. That is a huge difference between Babylonian religion and the good news of the gospel. It is God motivated by unconditional agape love that comes looking for the lost lambs. I think that's just a spectacular picture of God. John 10:16, I have other sheep which are not of this fold. I must bring them also, and they will hear my voice, and they will become one flock with one shepherd. Now, this is really another story. Notice this isn't lost sheep. This is other sheep. There are sheep out there who just simply will hear God say, it's time to come home. It's time to come back to the fold. And they're going to hear it. And you know what they're going to do? Because they're already His, they're going to say, it's time to come home. It's time to come home. By the way, who gave the invitation? God did. So if God is the one who goes looking and God's the one who's calling, how much credit can we take for our salvation? All we can do is surrender and accept it with joy. And by the way, if you read the story in Luke, when the lost sheep comes home, God throws a party. Okay? Why not have a party? It's such joy. For this reason the Father loves me, because I lay down my life so that I may take it up again. No one has taken it away from me, but I lay it down on my own initiative. Jesus said, I do what I do out of God's love for humanity. And He's talking about His journey to the cross, to the tomb, and to the resurrection. And what happens with the resurrection? He is resurrected to offer you life eternal as a gift. Understand what it is that motivates God compared to what is used in Babylon to motivate individuals. Hebrews chapter 13. Now, the God of peace. Who is God in Hebrews? Who is He? He is the God of peace. There is oftentimes little peace in the craziness of our world, but I will tell you that the church should be a location and a place in which we encounter the peace of heaven, because we have surrendered our own irrationalities at the door, and we came to enter into the presence of God and to experience His peace here in this room. Who brought up from the dead the great shepherd of the sheep through the blood of the eternal covenant, even Jesus our Lord, equip you in every good thing to do His will. I want to just back up here to verse 21. Equip you with every good thing to do His will. How is it that God's will is able to be accomplished in your life? How does His will become your will in this story? Jesus was brought back from the dead to equip you. How is it you are equipped? Through Jesus Christ. You are equipped through Jesus Christ. You are not equipped by how hard you try. You're equipped by how much you surrender to accept His tools to provide everything you need. Notice what it says. To equip you in every good thing. You do not lack anything. Can I say this again? You lack nothing. There's no need for you to supplement God by your behavior to prove to the world how good you are. That's Babylonian religion. Let's build a city to show how good we are. The truth is that Christ is the equipper to provide you what it is that you need. Are you a willing recipient? That's good news, isn't it? Working in us that which is pleasing in His sight through Jesus Christ, to whom be the glory forever and ever. Amen. You know, I got to tell you, we need more praise in the church, but the praise comes from your experiencing the equipping of Jesus Christ. And the more you are equipped, the more praise and joy there is in the church. And if you think there ought to be more praise in the church, you can't make it a contrived praise. You cannot make it pretend praise. It comes from the good things Jesus is doing in your life. And you come to church effervescent, full of joy of what Christ has done in you. It is Christ in you, the hope of glory, Colossians 1:27. So, it is God who is looking for you. It is God who provides all that you need. That is in Christ. It is God who says, Isaiah 30, verse 21, and thine ears shall hear a word behind you saying, this is the way, walk in it, when you turn to the right hand and when you turn to the left. God is there to lead you in your life. Thank you. It is a good thing. I appreciate that, Dale. The last verse, Matthew 11:28, the way out of Babylon. Remember, I promised you a way out. It's profoundly simple. The invitation, remember, it's God who calls. Here's the invitation. Here's what God calls. Come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Now, let's contrast that to Babylonian religion. Come to me, all who are weary laden, and I will give you a lot of additional works to do to prove you're saved. That's Babylonian religion. He says, come to me, and I am going to give you rest in Jesus. Doesn't that just sound wonderful? Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. Now, how many of you have ever plowed with oxen? I'm not seeing a single hand here. They take the young oxen and they take a mature oxen and they put a yoke over them, and the young oxen learns to walk beside the mature one. And who's doing all the work? The big one is doing all the work. And you learn just to walk alongside. Jesus says, just come alongside and walk with me. You know, we didn't do the Enoch story, but it says that one day Enoch walked with God and kept on going. And is still walking with God. That's a wonderful yoke story, in my opinion. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you're going to find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. We come by faith into his rest, and we find our way to walk out of Babylon in Jesus Christ by faith alone. That's the best news in the whole world, isn't it? So in our story of Genesis, what have we learned? Yes, they tried one more time after the ark rested and populations grew on the earth. They tried one more time and ended up in unstoppable evil. Just like the Babylonian story in Revelation 17 and 18. And God said, I'm going to disperse you over the earth. I'm going to change your language. It's going to slow down everything so you will have time to get to know me and see what the good news is. And we're in that time right now. I hope you've enjoyed this story. Let's bow our heads and pray.